The oil fields in Gulf are on fire because this is no longer a distant conflict confined to frontline. What we are witnessing is a full-scale disruption of the world's energy backbone. From Saudi Arabia to Qatar, from UAE to Kuwait, critical oil and gas infrastructure is now under direct attack. Refineries are burning, gas fields are shut, and LNG hubs are hit. At the same time, China has shut the other door by halting fertilizer exports, cutting off the last alternative supply for global agriculture. 6 Gulf states, none directly at war, are now in the line of fire. So, has the conflict crossed the point of containment is the big question. Take a look at your screen right now. These are not isolated incidents. These are simultaneous strikes across the Gulf. On one window, you see Saudi Arabia's refining capacity under threat. On another, Qatar's Ras Laffan facility, the backbone of global LNG supply, burning after a strike. The UAE's gas infrastructure is partially offline. Kuwait's largest refinery has been hit and operations disrupted. What you are seeing is not just damage, it is a systematic attempt to choke supply at multiple points at the same time. Let's dive deeper. In Saudi Arabia, the Samref refinery in Yanbu has been hit in an aerial strike. This Red Sea facility is a key export route as the Strait of Hormuz remains restricted. While initial damage appears limited, the strategic impact is significant. The Jubail petrochemical complex has also been placed on high alert following threats from IRGC. In Qatar, Ras Laffan, the world's largest LNG hub, has been under attack. It has been struck, triggering fire and emergency response. Mesaieed has also been flagged as a potential target. In the UAE, Al-Husn gas field is under threat. It processes ultra-Sa gas and produces sulfur, a key input for the fertilizers linking energy disruption directly to agriculture. In Kuwait, the Mina al-Ahmadi refinery has been hit by a drone, forcing a temporary shutdown of operations, impacting nearly 3 lakh barrels per day. The key refinery processes crude from the Burgan field, making its disruption significant for the global supply chains. As the strikes intensify, Gulf nations are now closing ranks. Foreign ministers from across the region have issued a joint condemnation, calling these attacks a violation of sovereignty and a direct threat to regional stability. They have demanded an immediate halt to the strikes and warned of serious consequences if escalation continue.
And I think that's the clearest signal of how Iran feels about diplomacy. It doesn't believe in talking to its neighbors. It tries to pressure its neighbors. And what I can say categorically, that's not going to work. The kingdom is not going to succumb to pressure. On the contrary, this pressure will backfire. Will backfire politically, will backfire, I believe, morally, and certainly, as we have stated quite clearly, we have reserved the right to take military actions if deemed necessary. And if the time comes, the leadership of the kingdom will take the necessary decision. I've not had a long enough diplomatic career to have experienced such a blatant attempt at blackmail as firing missiles while a diplomatic gathering is taking place. If Iran doesn't stop, that is the mood also I heard in this room earlier, immediately, I think there will be almost nothing that can re-establish that trust.
In fact, US Secretary of War justified the attack on South Pars by Israel and said Iran has weaponized energy for long and the attack is a clear warning by Israel.
We hold the cards. We have objectives. Those objectives are clear. We have allies pursuing objectives as well. And the truth speaks for itself. I mean, President Trump was very clear about that. Iran has weaponized energy for decades. Israel clearly sent a warning, and POTUS has made it clear, very clear. Iran knows when you hit Karg Island and you hit military capabilities on Karg Island, which is the only thing we hit, we can hold anything at issue, anything. The United States military controls the fate of that country. Iran has the ability to make the right choices. It should not, going forward, target Arab allies, Arab countries, trying to create pain, the pain that they created themselves.
Meanwhile, Joint Chief of Staff Chair General Dan Kane, responding to Iran's retaliation, said Tehran can attack US, but its power has been degraded significantly as compared to how they entered the war, all guns blazing.
U.S. CENTCOM remains on plan to achieve our military objectives and remain unrelenting in our pursuit of Iranian missile capabilities, UAV capabilities, and their Navy, and as the Secretary said, their industrial base. Each day we continue to attack deeper into Iranian territory. As reported by U.S. Central Command yesterday, the U.S. military dropped 5,000-pound penetrator weapons into underground storage facilities, storing coastal defense cruise missiles and other support equipment. These weapons are bespokely designed to get through concrete and/or rocks and function after penetrating those barriers. We continue to hunt and kill mine storage facilities and naval ammunition depots. We continue to hunt and kill afloat assets, including more than 120 vessels and 44 mine layers, and the pressure will continue. We're flying further to the east now and penetrating deeper into Iranian airspace to hunt and kill one-way attack garrisons, destroying Iran's ability to project power outside of its borders.
Now let me tell you about the consequences of these attacks, which go far beyond just oil price. What is under threat tonight is the entire chain that powers the global economy. Refineries are not just producing fuel, they produce inputs for petrochemicals. Gas plants are not just producing energy, they produce sulfur, which is essential for fertilizers. With the Strait of Hormuz choked and the China halting fertilizer export, the world is now facing a double whammy. This means higher fuel prices, rising food costs, pressure on farmers, and eventually a direct hit on consumers across the world. So here are the big questions I'm asking. Is this now a full-scale energy war targeting global supply chains? Has Iran expanded the battlefield to include the entire Gulf? Did the strike on South Pass trigger a strategic miscalculation? Are global food and fertilizer supplies the next big casualty? And finally, is the world prepared for a prolonged energy and economic shock? This is the debate. We are just getting started. On this issue, I'm joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta. Thank you so much, both of you. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Dayal. Sir, in an article you wrote, you have argued that this is going to be a slow, protracted conflict, which is not going to end so easily and quickly. Why?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show and for reading my article today. You know, this war is going to be a protracted one because of the fact that the US and Israel have underestimated Iran's capacity to dig in its heels and fight back. You know, the US and Israel are militarily much more powerful than Iran. And surely their calculation was that they will hit Iran so hard that it will capitulate. But, and this is a fundamental but, after the attacks on Iran, which took place in June last year by the US and Israel, Iran had prepared itself very well for any second round of the conflict. And that is what we find has happened. It has distinguished itself by its capacity to produce drones and missiles, which are being used very effectively. Now, I think that Iran has been subjected to an attack which is not justified. And this attack was waged by Israel and the United States. Now, the escalation which has taken place is also due to the actions of Israel and the United States. You know, the Pars gas fields in southern Iran, which are the world's largest gas fields, was attacked by Israel. And although Donald Trump has said that he was not consulted, he did not know about it, but many media sources in the United States, including the Wall Street Journal, are saying that the United States had been kept in the picture by Israel. Now, if Iran is attacked in this severe manner, then naturally it will try to escalate and expand the conflict, and that is what it has done. It has attacked the Gulf states, and we all expected that to happen because most of these states, or in fact all of them, have American bases from where Iran was being attacked. Iran was also being attacked from ships and from aircraft which were flying all the way from the United States. But the bases in these Arab Gulf states were also being used. Iran had warned all of them not to let the United States use these bases.
Okay.
But you know, the US is much more powerful and it doesn't listen to anybody. So Trump used these bases and attacked Iran brutally. And now the last straw was, of course, the assassination of three senior leaders in 2 days, along with the attack on the gas fields of Iran. So Iran was compelled to attack the Gulf states. Now, let me also mention that the escalation may not have ended. The Strait of Hormuz is closed for all tankers, except probably a few which Iran permits. So we are facing a very, very severe crisis.
Yes.
And as you pointed out in your introductory remarks, it's not just about oil and gas. It's about an entire range of goods which affect various sectors. So we are in for a very difficult time.
Okay. Ambassador Dasgupta, you know, plastics, medicines, fertilizers, these are also connected with petrochemicals. Do you think that finally this inflationary impact will descend on the global community, cannot be escaped?
Few factors which have to be borne in mind. The first one is the cost of this war on the aggressors, on Israel and the US. From the latest reports, it has come out that Pentagon is probably asking for $200 billion of extra money to pursue this war. And one doesn't know really how the US Congress is going to behave in sanctioning this $200 billion of extra money. The second point is that the American leadership has mentioned, Pete Hegseth, for instance, mentioned very clearly that there is no end date for the war. So if we take, and the third point which also needs to be kept in mind is that there are news reports which are emerging which say that in Ayatollah Khamenei's time, he had distributed the leadership of the IRGC in 31 districts.
Yes.
And with autonomous commands. They are all on their own. And for every important functionary, there were at least 4 replacements who had been named or kept in mind. So that if the attacks kill one at the top, the next one would step up and take command. So all these things, and there is no indication that the regime change, which President Trump had mentioned initially, is going to take place because of these attacks. So the short point that I am trying to make is that the end of the war is uncertain.
You're saying the end of the war is uncertain, but then how would you describe this escalation? Because there's an escalatory ladder also. Has it gone up?
It has gone up because of 2 things. One, that the Gulf states initially, of course, there was an attack on Qatar, the gas field, and one on the eastern Saudi Arabian refinery. But now it has been, it has spread to many other Gulf countries, and the Israeli attack on the South Pars oil field. So it has escalated, I think, quite considerably over the past 4-5 days. And the Americans have mentioned that they have attacked about 7,000 points in Iran. And they have also killed very recently Ali Larijani,
Yes.
who was an Asian negotiator and who was perhaps amongst the Iranian hardline top leadership, somewhat something of a moderate. So with Larijani gone, I think the chances of having a negotiated settlement has also receded a bit into the background. So escalation has taken place. there is no sign that the Iranians will surrender or get to the table and, accept defeat. The Americans, to my mind, don't really know what they want because they have destroyed the weapons capabilities of the Iranians. They have mentioned that they also want to destroy the industrial infrastructure of Iran so that it can never rise up and produce weapons. But already, I think that has been degraded quite considerably, if not completely. So the Americans are not very clear as to what they want. The Israelis, as Kent also has mentioned in his resignation letter to the president, the Israelis have been leading the Americans by the nose, and the U.S. administration, I think, has been perhaps led into a war without any clear objectives in mind. So escalation has taken place. The end date is not clear. The Iranians are unlikely to, get to the negotiating table and sign for a truce. So the prices, there would be consequences, whether it is fertilizers, plastics, medicines, and a whole lot of other products, which depend on basically refined crude oil and other downstream products.
Okay.
So
Okay.
prospects are big.
Yeah. Ambassador, there was a very interesting line in the article you wrote. China brokered 2023 understanding between Riyadh and Tehran is in tatters. Does it also mark the end of the Chinese influence in the Gulf?
Well, that's a very, very difficult question to answer at this stage because how the Chinese will end up in terms of their influence is difficult to say. But for one thing, the American influence is going to be reduced. Much of the world sees Donald Trump as the person who could have prevented this war, but actually went ahead. Yes. And he was, as Ambassador Jan Dasgupta mentioned, led into the war, held by the nose by the Israelis. They led him into this conflict. And it's a very, very heavy cost that the world is having to bear. Now, you were referring to the escalation of the conflict. Now, that escalation doesn't seem to be ending. Firstly, in terms of cost. Secondly, in terms of the widening area of the conflict. And thirdly, of the nature of the impact that it is causing on a whole lot of countries. China is also affected because its oil supplies from Iran are being affected, although some Chinese ships have been allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. But if the gas fields are destroyed, the oil fields are impacted, then naturally that is going to have a very negative impact for China too. Let's see where it ends. But I think we are in for very difficult times. And I don't think that it was a justified war in any case. And history will hold the Americans and the Israelis to account in this regard.
Ambassador Dasgupta, there's a report that has come out that in between all of this, in last 3 months, the Chinese have been on a gold buying spree. The world has been busy in this war. They are buying gold all over the, wherever they can. Why? Why are the Chinese doing that?
Well, one thing I think there are several countries which are reducing their holdings in terms of the US bonds and in terms of dollars. And they are thinking of a day, not in the very distant future, when it would be, the strong currencies other than dollar, which would be used for transacting international deals, and gold. And gold prices have been going up, and partly also because of the huge purchases by governments like China. So, there are stray reports coming out in the press saying that the Iranians have allowed ships which are dealing not in dollars, which carry a cargo of oil, which has been purchased by using other currencies, chiefly yuan. I don't know if the reports are correct, but if they are, the the Chinese are very definitely gaining out of this war. And the last point I wanted to mention is that there is no estimate really of how many missiles or drones the Iranians have. They apparently have a very large underground maze which they have built over the years, and especially in the last 8-10 months or so, which has all these missiles and drones and other weapons. And the Chinese have the designs of the Iranian drones, which have been used extensively by Russia in Ukraine. And one doesn't know whether the Chinese actually are supplying these weapons, because there are reports again which say that these drones and other things which the Iranians are using are costing between $20,000 and $30,000. And the US missiles
Yes.
are costing more than $1 million. So there is, a huge asymmetry in terms of the amounts being spent. So if this rumor is correct, or these unsubstantiated reports are correct about the Chinese helping the Iranians in their war effort, the Chinese definitely are helping the Iranians through intelligence about the precise location of targets and other things.
And
that, I think, has been mentioned by various news agencies.
I think Ambassador Dal in his article wrote, and on that note, I'll conclude this conversation, that the Iranians don't want to defeat the United States of America. They want to outlast them. And if you want to outlast an enemy, it's like Taliban. They outlasted the Americans, when they used to say that the Americans have watches and we have time on our hand. So that's what the Iranians are doing, and their ability to absorb so much of damage is also something which a lot of military historians need to study. Not only their leadership is surviving in various forms, but they're also able to absorb the damage on the infrastructure. So on that note, I conclude this conversation.
May I touch upon the gold issue very briefly?
Okay.
It's not just the Chinese, but many countries, including India, and of course the Russians and the Turks, are actively purchasing gold to diversify away from the US dollar reserves.
Yes.
All countries are beginning to rely that the US dollar denominated assets are fragile and they are losing in value. And that is why they are trying to augment their gold reserves. Let me mention that in early 2026, RBI has bought a lot of gold, and India's share in the total gold reserves has gone up from about less than 6% in 2021 to over 14.5% in October 2025. So we have increased our share of gold holdings because of the fact we want to rely less on dollar reserves and more on gold.
Okay.